Trump is teasing that he will announce those reciprocal tariffs later today. Eamon Javers is at the White House with the latest. Do we know anything about the size and scope of what this is going to look like?
We don't know anything about the size and scope of what this is going to look like. What we do know now is timing. The president just putting out a post on Truth Social just a few minutes ago saying that the event will be at 1 o'clock here at the White House later today. Here's his Truth Social post from last night in which he talked about the success that he's had over the past couple of weeks and the fact that he's going to do reciprocal tariffs today. That post going out last night saying, I'm sorry, this is the post from just about 10 minutes ago saying 1 p.m. in the Oval Office today. So that's what we know, Sarah. The question is, what is the president going to be announcing and how much Jell-O is going to be in the bowl here on these reciprocal tariffs? My understanding from talking to White House officials over the past 24 hours is that this is very much a moving target. Has been over that time frame. They've been talking with foreign leaders around the world, a lot of industry groups wanting exemptions for their industries, for different regions around the country. The way this has been explained to me is that all of those details were being hashed out through the day yesterday. It's not clear how finished they are. And so one of the things I'll be watching for is whether this is an announcement of tariffs going into effect today or whether this is an announcement of some rollout plan in the future for tariffs that are still to come. Will there be some kind of time frame on this saying, this might not happen for 30 days, 90 days, 180 days, something like that, because of the nature of that moving target through the night last night and through the day yesterday. The other thing that I'm told is that the president's been very resistant to the idea of exemptions for tariffs. A lot of people have been asking for carve-outs and favors, and the president views that as sort of trying to turn the block of cheese into Swiss cheese. He has resisted a lot of that, but we'll see where we land later on today. Meanwhile, overnight, we saw Elon Musk saying he wants to delete federal agencies. Here's what he said at an event overnight.
I think we do need to delete entire agencies as opposed to leave part of them behind. Because if you leave part of them behind, it's easy. It's kind of like if leaving a weed. If you don't remove the roots of the weed, then it's easy for the weed to grow back. But if you remove the roots of the weed, it doesn't stop weeds from ever growing back, but it makes it harder.
So it goes without saying that there's no delete key on the keyboard in the White House to delete federal agencies that, Congress creates the spending for, creates the law to set up federal agencies. So, how much of that the White House will be able to do, how much of that DOJ will be able to do, will really be up to the courts. And I think a lot of this will be challenged in the courts, as they've seen so far. The president has said he's going to abide by court rulings. He's going to appeal them when he sees that to be necessary. And we'll see what the Supreme Court ultimately says on whether this White House has the authority to delete entire agencies or whether the power of the purse and the power of creating those agencies in the first place rests with the Congress. So a lot of moving parts here at the White House today, guys.
Speaking of deleting, Eamon, this morning a story on the tape about the State Department's plans to buy $400 million in armored Cybertrucks from Tesla has now vanished, right, according to Bloomberg. Where again, it feeds that discussion of just how close Elon Musk is to some of these actions that affect his own business.
Yeah, and that goes back to the conflict of interest question, right? If he's rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse, is buying armored Teslas waste? I mean, some people would say that it is. Other people would say, they need armored vehicles in the military and in the government, so why not buy Teslas? But if Elon has control over that kind of spending or vast influence over it, is that ultimately a conflict of interest? If I'm Ford, and or other makers of armored vehicles, I say, that's not fair.
On the tariffs, Eamon, it is interesting that he's hosting Modi from India today, because I was looking. So India has the 10th biggest trade deficit with the U.S., $35 billion. I mean, they do also have high tariffs. So as far as a poster child for reciprocal tariffs, even in our interview yesterday with Peter Navarro, he mentioned Europe and he mentioned India. So is that going to be awkward?
I think it might be awkward, right? I mean, and the question is, a lot of these countries, as they approach the Trump administration, are trying to come here to the White House with some kind of peace offering, some kind of symbolic large gesture. So we'll see if Modi has something like that planned. Maybe lowering tariffs could be one of those things. We'll see. But, yeah, it could be awkward. That's why we'll watch.
Yeah, the last thing, Eamon, is this piece by Chrystia Freeland of Canada in the Times today, where she calls tariffs on Canadian imports an act of economic self-mutilation, and basically says that if America is going to go ahead with this, we're going to, quote, find some friends elsewhere to the degree they can. Also a piece in page 1 of the LA Times about a so-called boycott of American goods by Canadians gaining some ground, they argue.
Yeah. Look, and that's the risk of tariffs, right, is that you grind sand in the face of your allies and friends, you fray trade relationships. This president, though, feels that those costs are worth paying, whatever they might be, and he doesn't fully believe that all these threats of boycotts and things will come to pass, but he believes whatever the costs are, those are worth paying in order to have domestic manufacturing, domestic production of steel, aluminum, and the like, that we simply need to reset America's trade relationships around the world, and that's going to come with some short-term pain.
I mean, sure, there's risk of that we're not reliable partners and not doubling down on our allies. But a lot of that is also political posturing. They're running an election in Canada. What are they going to do? Turn to China as their ally? I mean, that doesn't seem very realistic given the geography and the values of Canada. But I guess we'll see, Eamon.
I don't know. There's a lot of trade between Canada and China now. I mean, that is the risk, but there's a lot of political posturing on all sides, right? I mean, as I said yesterday, I mean, Trump is a hardliner, but he's something of a flexible hardliner in the sense that he's willing to take a very hard rhetorical approach and then back off that to something much lesser if he gets what he sees as a deal on the other side, Carl. So he's a deal maker. He's flexible. All of these things are moving targets at all times.
Right. The question, of course, is what accounts for a deal? Is it a trade deficit? Is it a drug war? Is it a revenue enhancement? All those things are yet to be determined.
Maybe buying oil in the case of India today. I mean, they buy most of their oil from Russia and not the United States.
Yeah, right.
So it is interesting. I would just say that the dollar's weaker right now. That's going to be the first place you turn when these tariffs are announced. It's been strong dollar, weak on who gets tariffed, and then we'll see the market reaction. It's been a very reactive market now to tariffs, not proactive, because we just don't know what it's going to look like.
Exactly.